St. Teresa's College was not just another elite all-girls school in Lagos, it was a fortress of discipline, a place where girls were expected to transform into proper women, obedient daughters, future wives, and respectable members of society. Adesewa had had all of this before stepping through the imposing iron gates. At 16, she had already attended 2 other boarding schools, transferred each time because her mother believed she was too stubborn for her own good. But she had promised herself that this time would be different. No unnecessary trouble. No breaking rules. But the moment she entered the school grounds, she felt it, a strange energy in the air. Girls whispered in hushed tones, eyes darting toward her as she walked past. It wasn't just the usual curiosity about the new girl. There was something else. Something deeper. Her assigned dormitory, St. Catherine's house, was old but well-maintained. The room smelled of talcum powder and books, and the bunks were neatly arranged. That was where she first met Amoka. Tall, confident, and radiating an effortless charm, Amoka was different from the other girls. Where they wore their uniforms stiffly, she let her sleeves fall slightly above her elbows, her tie loosened just enough to hint at rebellion. "You're new," Amoka observed, her dark eyes studying Adesewa with something that felt dangerously close to intrigue. "Obviously," Adesewa replied, dropping her suitcase beside the bed. Amoka smirked. "I like you already." The first few weeks were uneventful. Adesewa kept to herself, focused on her books, and avoided unnecessary attention. But at night, when the dormitory was silent and the only sounds were the distant chirping of crickets, she noticed something peculiar. Certain girls would sneak out, disappearing for hours before returning quietly. One evening, unable to suppress her curiosity, Adesewa decided to follow. She trailed a small group of girls through the empty hallways, past the chapel, and into an old music room no longer in use. Inside, the air was thick with tension and candlelight flickered against the walls. The girls sat in a circle on the wooden floor, their faces partially obscured by shadows. Amoka was there. She met Adesewa's gaze and smirked. "Welcome to the circle," she said, gesturing for Adesewa to sit. At first, Adesewa didn't understand what she had stumbled upon. They weren't practicing witchcraft, nor were they plotting against the school authorities. But there was an undeniable sense of secrecy, an unspoken understanding that this space was different. Here, the girls spoke freely about things they dared not say in daylight. About the feelings they had been taught to suppress. About the loneliness that came with knowing they were different. And then, Amoka leaned in close, her voice a whisper against Adesewa's ear. "This is where we come to be ourselves." The days blurred into nights, and Adesewa found herself drawn deeper into the circle. It wasn't just the thrill of secrecy, it was the freedom. The quiet moments shared in the empty corridors, the stolen glances during morning assembly, the way Amoka's fingers brushed against hers when no one was watching. One evening, after a late-night meeting, Amoka walked her back to the dormitory. They stood in the dimly lit hallway, their faces inches apart. "You're afraid," Amoka murmured. Adesewa swallowed. "I'm not." "You should be." And then, Amoka reached out, her fingers gently tracing Adesewa's jawline before pulling away just as quickly. A silent promise. A dangerous invitation. Adesewa lay awake that night, her heart racing. Whispers began to spread. Funmi, the head prefect, had noticed the strange behavior of certain girls. She had seen them linger too long after evening prayers, exchange looks that carried too much meaning. One night, she followed them. She saw 2 figures hidden behind the chapel, their bodies pressed too closely together. The next morning, an emergency assembly was called. The school has been made aware of inappropriate conduct among some students, the principal's voice boomed through the hall. This is unacceptable. Anyone caught engaging in such immoral behavior will face immediate expulsion. A shiver ran through the student body. Funmi's eyes darted toward Adesewa. Adesewa knew their secret was hanging by a thread. Fear spread like wildfire. Some girls distanced themselves from the circle, too afraid of what would happen if they were caught. Others whispered about who might have snitched. Then, the inevitable happened. One evening, Amoka was called to the principal's office. She did not return to the dormitory that night. The next morning, the news spread, Amoka was being expelled. Adesewa felt like she couldn't breathe. Was this the end? Adesewa had never been one to take risks. But this wasn't just about breaking school rules. This was about something bigger. She stood in front of Funmi that evening, her voice steady. "You think you've won?" she asked. Funmi crossed her arms. "I did what was right." "No," Adesewa said, her heart pounding. "You did what was expected." And then, she walked away, her mind made up. That night, she slipped a note into Amoka's hands. "Meet me at the gate. Midnight." And as the clock struck 12, they ran. Away from the school. Away from the fear. Towards something unknown. But free. Years later, as Adesewa sat in a cafe in Lagos, flipping through the pages of a book, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You still have a habit of sneaking out, don't you?" She turned, and there was Amoka, the same mischievous smirk on her lips. Adesewa smiled. Some secrets, no matter how dangerous, were worth keeping.